utterly bizarre moments down on the black and gold brand, and some seriously disappointing first few WrestleMania moments are just a couple of the things WWE would prefer their fans didn't remember about the absolute megastar that is Mami. And if you want to learn about some more, then oh boy do I have the list for you. Because I am Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 things WWE wants you to forget about Rhea Ripley. Number 10, the 2017 Mae Young Classic. Every wrestler has to start somewhere, and though Rhea Ripley didn't get going from scratch in WWE, at just 20 years old, she may as well have done. Now, ultimately, the tournament wasn't going to be her time to shine. She lost to Dakota Kai in the round of 16. But she got enough profile along the way to be given promo time talking about a version of herself that doesn't exactly mesh well with the performer she ultimately became. Again, this is no slight on Ripley, like, at all. She was a pro wrestler just finding her way, and one day the stark contrast is going to be part of the fun when the company puts together a long-form documentary on her amazing rise through the ranks. Right now is not that time, though. Judgment Day leader Rhea needs this footage out there like Stone Cold Steve Austin needed Ringmaster retrospectives, or Becky Lynch needed reminders of her comedic Irish dancing NXT debut. Number 9, her 2019 NXT push wasn't actually the plan. Rhea Ripley's 2019 call-up was an unmitigated success. She arrived in the summer as somebody unintimidated by terrifying and dominant NXT champion Shayna Baszler, took her to the limit in her first match, became her physical and mental equal on television in the months that followed, shone in the first ever women's war games in the takeover of the same damn name, and defeated her in the main event of the only edition of the black and gold brand to ever claim a viewership and demo ratings win over AEW Dynamite. Hell of a run then, right? End to end, the whole thing felt like a creative and strategic triumph. In reality, though, it was actually rooted in a couple of happy accidents. Per Ripley herself during a conversation on the Wrestling Friends podcast with Flash Morgan Webster, Ripley was actually destined for defeat before agents picked up on the extra energy in their initial showdown. From there, Baszler and others lavish praise upon the newcomer from her work on house shows, and plans were changed to have Ripley see through her campaign with the biggest possible victory at the end. It was realistically the last star-making run on the brand before things on the show started to fall apart. But before we get there, I want to know right now, who is your favourite black and gold era wrestler of all time? Was it Rhea Ripley? Was it Finn Balor? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 8, the delayed save. Had there been less excruciating bits of overproduced pro wrestling television on NXT in early 2020, the Wednesday Night Wars might not have been as good as over before the global pandemic expedited things. But Full Sail was the home of far too many cack-handed character-killing moments. And Rhea Ripley fell victim in a big way on the road to WrestleMania 36 too. Oh boy. The February 26, 2020 edition of NXT was one of the last before the restrictions of the time set in, and featured Royal Rumble winner and NXT interloper Charlotte Flair scoring a victory over obvious future breakout Bianca Belair. Now this in itself was a touch on the destructive side, but it paled in comparison to watching Flair batter the EST in a post-match beatdown, as Ripley elected to go through her entire entrance before making the save. Yeah, that happened. The show itself was clearly on a clock too, and it very nearly looked as though it'd be off the air before the champion actually made it to the ring. It probably does actually need to be seen to be believed, so if you've not already, go watch it and then come back, right? Go. Now you're back. That was fast. The Nightmare had scared the Queen off, sort of, but couldn't have looked dafter in her efforts to do so, which you'll probably agree because you've just watched it. Suddenly, the match with Flair had stakes beyond just the belt around Ripley's waist. The show of shows needed a payoff that was as much about rehabilitation as revenge. Yeah, about that as well. Number 7, everything about WrestleMania 36. WrestleMania from inside an empty gym, it needed noise, didn't it? And Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair certainly provided that in their hard-hitting 2020 opener. But rather than foreshadowing what was one day to come between the two on the grandest stage, this did almost irrecoverable damage to Ripley's main roster future. Keen to test her mettle on the show she dominated once before, Flair's challenge for the title was ostensibly quite the unique use of her Royal Rumble title shot. It was nice to see WWE just try something a bit different, wasn't it? All until she started steamrolling through the next generation of talents anyway. Bianca Belair was brushed aside in the aforementioned television match, and much the same happened to the Nightmare when she came face to face with the Queen. Booked to look levels above the champion, the challenger, well, she grunted and groaned enough when Ripley hit hard, but otherwise deconstructed, dominated, and destroyed en route to her second run with NXT Gold. And it was a loss WWE never particularly bothered to try and recover on television, not least when they were brought back together again on TV for a wretched series of segments in 2021. Oh, we'll get there. But before we do, number 6, the NXT Wilderness year. Even the best eras of WWE seem obsessed with testing their talents by seeing what exactly they can do new beyond just wrestling. Now that's not to say 2020 NXT was anywhere near the best of anything, but having appeared to be the company's next breakout star as recently as the prior December, Ripley was badly floundering as a knockabout babyface in the aftermath of her loss to Charlotte Flair. She never came all that close to reclaiming the gold from the Queen before she was pinned in the triple threat that moved the title onto the next champion, Io Shirai. Rather than rebounding from that setback, she then found herself trapped in a comedic summer series against Robert Stone and Aaliyah, one that droned on and on and on despite her making light work of the two in a handicap match. Away from unimportant fluff, she also lost matches that might have actually mattered against Dakota Kai and Toni Storm. Oh, here she's timeless, you know. She failed to get her belt back from Io Shirai and was even on the losing end of a largely forgotten Capitol Wrestling Center War Games match. Yep, they even had one of them in there. She put Raquel Rodriguez over in her farewell match before finally getting a main roster call-up. But that supposed blood feud ultimately underwhelmed on account of just how far her stock had fallen. It was a bit of a nightmare spell, really. See what I did there? Cheers for clicking on this video today, my friends, and if you are enjoying what you're watching, then hit that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture Wrestling stuff in your day. Number 5, her Major Miz Fandom. Cool is a near impossible thing to manufacture in pro wrestling, as it is in real life. But it's been integral to Rhea Ripley escaping some of the creative cul-de-sac she's found herself trapped in over the years. Force of will and ability to remain cool have served her well over multiple stumbling blocks planted in her path. But the inspiration behind that credibility comes from a place most unexpected, or depending on your tastes, most awesome. Ripley, as it turns out, was a superfan of The Miz. Yeah, The Miz, I kid you not. Opening up during various interviews about her love for the former WWE champion, Ripley well and truly opened the floodgates when she shared a shot from an old birthday celebration alongside a giant Miz stand-up. Oh yeah, and this was all while sporting a Miz shirt circa 2011. The fandom ran deep before the real-life Demi Bennett found herself taking on a decidedly different persona by the time she became colleagues with her former hero. An A-lister lover, this nightmare. Who saw that coming? Number 4, how a broken system destroyed a potential WrestleMania banger. There were way too many questions around Rhea Ripley's WWE main roster debut in 2021. Not least because she looked like the talent with all the answers just 2 years prior. Why had they waited so long to debut her when her Royal Rumble runner-up spot had been so well received? Why, when that run had been so well received, was she then brought in as a heel for her big chance at WrestleMania redemption? And why, oh why, would WWE book Rhea Ripley versus Asuka for the first time proper and not heavily promote it as a dream Clash of the Titans encounter? None of those questions were answered effectively in the end, because of course they weren't. Quite the opposite, in fact. Creative standards were pathetically, criminally low at this point, and 2021 was so far into the stuff just happens era that the pair were sent out to have a largely heatless contest over what would ultimately become Ripley's first main roster title. Now back then, Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair's closing moments had actually been compared to the John Cena Dave Bautista conclusion in 2005. Oh, you know the one. Only one could win, but both stood a chance of shining on WWE's grandest stage. Sadly though, the comparison carried over. Cena's coronation against JBL was underwhelming in the extreme, and so too, sadly, was this. Everybody, socially distanced crowd included, deserved more than they were given here. What a damn waste of a potentially huge moment. Number 3, the Charlotte Flair program. The polarizing Thunderdome was a means to an end for WWE as they continued to try and navigate the restrictions of the global pandemic without AEW's miracle method of simply telling good stories. But never did the fake crowd noises ring as hollow as when they were responding to Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair's risible back and forths. Now here's the thing, the pair were actually starting to circle the all-timer chemistry that awaited them in 2023. Money in the Bank 2021 is a particular highlight of what the two managed bell to bell. But a series of excruciating promo exchanges between the two left Ripley drowning just as much as their WrestleMania match had 1 year earlier. Ripley sold almost nothing that Ripley ever said, neutering one-liners that weren't even that potent anyway. Yet again, it was impossible to discern who was the heel and the babyface on account of just how damn dislikable both came across. As was often the case, lucky loser Nikki Cross was briefly somebody for audiences to gravitate towards, thanks to a briefcase cash-in. But the response to Nikki ASH was as much an indictment of the supposed unstoppable monster's trash talk as it was any groundswell of support for another wannabe superhero. Number 2, the original Judgment Day. Does this really need an explanation explanation like did you see it? Now that question's neither as rhetorical nor as snarky as it might first appear. The version of the Judgment Day, and indeed WWE, Rhea Ripley has managed to flourish in is absolutely nothing like the one she joined. And it was dropped as one of the last big Vince McMahon ideas before he resigned in disgrace for the first time and business boomed. She's led the group to Monday Night Raw supremacy, multiple tag and singles titles, and in turn been propelled to rarefied air at the top of the company alongside the likes of Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch, where she bloody belongs. It was not going to go that way had 2022's original version remained in place though. Brought in as salvation from a floundering run, which was the only thing that actually did make sense about all this, Ripley and Damian Priest stood alongside Edge as he sat in a massive chair. All new suit and haircuts with promos that, to paraphrase a far more satisfying period of the Rated R superstar's career, totally reeked of obnoxious verbosity. It took Finn Balor going from chief rival to surprise new member at Edge's expense to set them off on the right path, and Dominic Mysterio to complete the set and give Ripley an exceptional on-screen douchebag to flesh her character out alongside. Number 1, using a slur on a live stream. Demi Bennett was quick to post a public and detailed apology for the use of a slur on a live stream in 2019, and it's absolutely worth highlighting that just as much as the incident itself. Her thoughtless and deeply insensitive indiscretion was an unfortunate moment of madness in the nascent career of Rhea Ripley, and the understandable backlash she received from the LGBTQIA+ fans as well as the disappointed wrestling fanbase at large called for her to share not just said apology, but also an understanding of why in particular the utterance had been so hurtful. Ripley wasn't the first and sadly won't be the last from pro wrestling in such a situation, but did at least move to own all of it and attempt to heal wounds in the aftermath. Her addressing it head-on seemed to result in hostilities dying down, and at a bare minimum made clear how committed she was to understanding where and why she'd gone wrong. And what more can you ask for, really? She owned it and was seemingly just trying to be better. Have you enjoyed this video today, my friends? Well, if you have, then go and check out the things that WWE wants you to forget about Roman Reigns too. Oh, it's a good one. You're gonna have a good time. Bye-bye.